Hey guys, in today's video, you are going to be learning the difference between a rave, an EDM show, and a music festival. So let's get into it. What's up you guys? Welcome to the video. So today I am talking about a topic that I feel like is heavily debated, heavily discussed in the scene, and it's something I've always wanted to bring up on my channel, so we're getting into it today. As you can tell by the title, I'm going to be discussing the difference between a rave, an EDM show, and a music festival. Yes, they are three different things. If you guys are newer to the scene, I hope you can walk away from this video feeling more knowledgeable about the differences between these three. And if you do, go ahead and give this a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Quick disclaimer, my background and experience is with music festivals and raves in the United States. Like I mentioned, I'll briefly touch on the history of raving, but I do want to acknowledge that rave culture in Europe and rave culture in the United States are very different. So if you're watching from abroad, first off, hello. Some of these experiences may be a little bit different for you, but generally I'm going to be talking about raving and music festivals in the United States. With all that being said, let's get right into it. So raving started out in Europe in the 80s. It's heavily associated with the underground techno scene that was starting to happen over there. I can't stress enough that raving is a way of life in Europe. EDM is so heavily ingrained over there. You can hear it everywhere when you're walking around, when you're at a store, when you're eating at a restaurant. So many famous artists come from European countries, so it definitely is something that has been around for a much longer time over in Europe. It then became popularized later in the 1980s in the UK. It was also influenced by the dance music community in Ibiza, Spain. Artists got the experience over there, and again, that's a huge part of their culture, and then brought it over to the UK. So a lot of the club life and the raving scene were influenced by Ibiza. And then in the 1990s, that's where you're gonna see the emergence of the underground rave scene in the United States in cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco. These events were either legal or illegal, and again, they're more underground. They took places in different empty clubs, warehouses, honestly wherever they could pop up and have an event. And a lot of the times you would find out about them through a different flyer that would have a phone number posted on it, and you would call the number and you would get directions to the event. So again, it was a little bit more secretive in that nature. And I feel like a lot of people who were ravers back in the 90s were more of the misfits. These are people who needed someplace to go and express themselves and have fun. And so a lot of people who were raving back then definitely found a sense of community and culture through raving. This is also where you're going to see the emergence of things like Candy and Candy Kids and the Plur mantra, which came from Frankie Bones in the 1990s. It was actually originally called the Plum Peace, Love, Unity Movement, and then it eventually became Plur Peace, Love, Unity, Respect. And Plur is a whole mantra that a lot of ravers like to live their life by. In the 1990s, you're also going to see a heavy emergence of hard drug use at these events. Things like ecstasy were used pretty heavily, and you start to get that association with the raving scene, which eventually I feel like it got sort of a bad reputation for that, and people started to think of raves as just somewhere you go to party heavily and get messed up. Eventually, over the years, it started to fade out. You would see less and less of underground raves, and then, as a lot of you know, if you're on the younger side or you're newer to raving, there was a huge EDM burst in 2010 to 2012 with artists like David Guetta, Afrojack, Avicii, Swedish House Mafia, Hardwell, Tiesto, Armin van Buuren, the list goes on and on. EDM became extremely mainstream, very popular in the United States again, and this is where you started to see a whole new level of rave culture and the EDM community grow once again, and this is sort of like your newer ravers. That's definitely the category that I belong to. Now, raves are probably more commercialized than ever before. I do think the scene is bigger, there's more knowledge about it now, and I think there's a wider range of people who consider themselves ravers than before. I don't think you're seeing as many underground legal warehouse parties. They're more widely accepted at this point. But that's the brief history of raving. I'm now going to talk a little bit more about specific characteristics that you can use to describe a rave to give you guys a better understanding. So again, to me, a rave is more associated with something that might be underground in a warehouse or club-like environment, typically takes place later at night, can last multiple hours, and I specifically think of techno or maybe house associated with a rave. I would never call like a dubstep show or a heavy bass show a rave. I just don't think that that type of music is really associated with raving. It definitely skews more on the techno and house side of things. I would say that raves can be on the smaller to medium size, but there have been events that have had thousands of people, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a smaller event. It's typically one venue and again can last multiple hours throughout the night. It can be one artist or it could potentially be multiple, and you will typically see your ravers there. So depending on the event and the city and again where you're attending, in the United States, some things that are associated with rave culture are things like wearing candy or pearlers. And again, adopting this plur mentality of treating others with respect, coming as you are, coming in peace, being kind to one another, respecting the people around you, and just truly being welcoming to the experience and everybody that you're attending this event with.
I decided to add in some examples to really show you guys the differences. So first up are some clips from some raves I've been to. In a lot of these, you're gonna notice that I'm either in a club or a warehouse. This one was crazy. You had to show up under the theme A Midnight Summer Dream, full costumes or you weren't allowed in. It was one of the most unique experiences I've ever been to. This venue was called the Flash Factory. It was actually in an old church. The environment was so cool. And this last one was a rave on a rooftop. This is Output again on their roof that they used to have, one of my favorite day parties.
So one thing that this can easily get confused with is an EDM show, which in my case is something I attend the most often, obviously pre-COVID. To me, an EDM show is more like a concert or a live event experience. It's typically one night, you buy tickets to something to see a specific artist show. Usually you'll have a few openers and then the artist will be the main act who plays later in the night. To me, these events typically last anywhere from like 3 to 5 hours. They're usually earlier in the night, but again, it can vary depending on where you are. It's similar to more of a concert experience, but it's an EDM artist specifically. And sometimes these can be more mainstream acts, but that isn't necessarily the case. I've seen so many different smaller artists perform EDM shows as well. But the biggest difference I would say to me is an EDM show could be any genre. So I've seen dubstep artists, I've seen deep house artists, I've seen trance artists play one-off shows. I've seen artists who have more of a live act like Griffin or Kygo.
Here are a few examples of some of the many EDM shows I have gone to in my life. What you'll notice about a lot of these that I didn't mention before is with some of these artists were on tour. So they played these shows many times across the country. They have the same opening acts usually, and these have far more production. So they have a specific stage design, production. Some of them have different gifts that they throw out into the crowd or balloons or confetti. So it's way more of a produced show, and you'll notice that with some of these clips.
So lastly, a music festival. This to me is extremely different than a rave, but again, if you're new to the scene, you might not fully understand the differences. So a music festival to me is a much larger scale event. You're gonna have way more attendees, anywhere upwards of 150,000 people, which is something that EDC Las Vegas or maybe a Tomorrowland would see. They can span across multiple days, or they could be one day. They have multiple stages and a ton of acts on their lineups. So this is something where you'll get to see maybe 30 plus acts in one weekend. And again, there could be multiple stages. So depending on the size of the music festival, you could have 2 stages or you could have up to 8 different stages. So you can take your pick and you can kind of see whatever you want to see. And that also comes into play with genres. Music festivals could represent all different types of genres. It does not have to be EDM specific. As an EDM fan, I like to attend EDM music festivals, but I've also been to multi-genre festivals. For example, Governor's Ball, they will have live acts, rock bands, pop artists, and then they'll have an EDM stage if that's something you're into and you want to go see a DJ perform. So a music festival does not have to be EDM specific. Music festivals can happen either during the day or at night or a little bit of both. And you can have so many different types. You can have a city event, you can have a camping event, which means that wherever the event takes place, there are some sort of campgrounds associated. So you can either bring your own tents. Some music festivals provide lodging for you. Some of them have RV camping passes as an option. And a city event obviously takes place in a large city. So for example, Electric Zoo takes place on Randall's Island in New York City, and you have to take some form of public transportation to get there, but it is smack dab on an island right next to New York City. There are also different types of events. So there are arts and music festivals, which will have way more art installations and exhibits, and there's a lot more to interact with. It's not just about the music. You can have different vendors there, and there are also events that are transformative music festivals. So you're now seeing events that have things incorporated like wellness workshops or different seminars or yoga classes, way more transformative of an experience, so you can go away for the weekend and escape and kind of enter this whole new world. That's what music festivals are to me. They're built experiences to totally transform you and bring you whatever it is you're looking for, whether it's music, arts, meeting new people, camping. The options are endless. And then I just had to mention this one at the end because this one can be very confusing to people. Separate from all of this, on its own level, you have Burning Man. Burning Man is not a music festival, it's not a concert. It is a temporary city that is built at the Black Rock Desert in Nevada. It's been around for over 20 years. That is an entire culture in itself. And a lot of people call it a music festival, but it is not a music festival. It is literally built every single year. All of the people who buy tickets and the citizens of Burning Man will show up there, whether they drive there, fly there, take a bus, whatever it is. They build their campgrounds. They bring everything there, all of the art installations, the art cars. They build a city. People have jobs. It's an entire way of life for, I believe it's 1 to 2 weeks that the entire event takes place. That is definitely more of a transformative experience. Again, you are completely relying on whatever you bring. So whatever food, water, bathrooms, all of that is dependent on what you show up with. So you have to be extremely prepared for that event. But it is easily confused and commonly called a music festival. And I know a lot of people who attend Burning Man completely disagree with that. It is a temporary city that is built. Alrighty, you guys, that is the end of this video. I truly hope you enjoyed this and found it helpful. I know for a lot of people this can be really confusing, so I hope this gives you more clarity on this subject and you learned something new from this video. If you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate you guys giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel if you are new here. If you guys want to learn more about the EDM community and music festivals, I host a weekly podcast called Rave Culture Cast. It comes out every single Wednesday and it is made for the EDM community, so I think you guys will really enjoy that. There will be a link down below if you're interested in checking it out. You can also follow along with me on social media at Emma Capotis on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and at Hey There Emma on Snapchat. All right, I think that's all I've got for you guys. Thank you so much for checking this video out, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.